Marcia Zimmerman.
What?
Oh, man. Howard Hill.
It was you or Howard. So we put your name in a hat, and Howard came out.
Laura Bowers. Can I see a show of hands of who would like to see maybe Joyce play this morning?
Oh, there you go.
Yes, Joyce. There's a whiteboard in there. No, you don't need your glasses. Whiteboard, you can move down a little bit.
Ryan didn't even say it.
Is this if we don't get it right? We have issues to try. No, none for you. Every now and then I like to entertain myself at parties with questions and people, and I thought they'd play some great story. So here we go. You guys have pins on your whiteboard, and then we will rate you maybe or not. Here's question number one. The audience may view the question. If you could have another person's hair who is currently in this room, whose would it be and why? And Steve, my name is spelled with an H. Okay. Put your answers down. Another person's hair in this room, whose would it be and why?
Because they have some.
Right? Some are evidently slower than others. Right? Are we done yet? Marcia?
Yes. Does that mean you want me to share?
No, I just want to know if you're done. Okay. Flip your boards. Let's see what they say. Justin Paquette. Aaron. Sweet beers. Steve selected. Obviously, like a farmer. Stephanie, so stylish.
That's brownie points.
Stephanie.
I said nice current style, and it looks like she has an ombre.
What is that? Is that ombre? Oh, okay. Rodney, low maintenance. Rodney, you are just knocking it out here. I wouldn't have to spend an hour on that.
When you least expect it, expect it. Put something in his
Rodney is almost as nice as mine.
Everyone puts Rodney's hair.
Next question. What is the first thing you notice about people? Why? What is the first thing you notice about people and why?
Family show, right?
Gotta have a why on there. Why is that the first thing you notice?
You can't say anything nice, you're not going to say anything at all,
All right, Mr. Gentile, flip the board.
I'm still thinking.
We'll come back to you. Marsha.
They smile. Are they cranky or friendly?
Is that a good gauge? I mean, are you?
I think so. If you approach somebody and they're just, you know, they give you either a nasty look, well then you may not want to stop and talk to them. Well, maybe, but I always try to have a smile, so see if I don't get one back. Oh, we do.
Smile. You tell a lot of words about this one. Hair. Eyes and smile, and her answer is very particular, just enough. Smile or not? reflection of their mood. Eyes, mirror to their soul. What do my eyes do? Eye, hair color, I'm colorblind. I like that, Justin. I think you win. You have won that round. All right, next question. Everyone has a special talent. What's yours? Everyone has a special talent for us. Find yours.
Yeah, you just keep them to yourself. I'm the one with the whiteboard, so.
Well, you started this at this time, right? Yeah. There's pen flipping.
Flipping.
So sometimes I flip, but then sometimes I flick.
I don't think anyone else.
I think I want to learn that.
Ms. Zimmerman.
Mostly mine is pleasing people with my baking.
Oh,
Like,
amen.
like to bake.
You win. You win this round. I don't need to read everything.
I can be in two places at once.
Julie. Cool. I did not know that. Joyce.
Painting.
Cooking. If birthday, Steve. That is.
I just learned that this weekend. Yeah, I doubt that. Oh, yeah, that's
Show
all in my
finish
house.
cars. Good deal. All right, let's go. If you could have lunch with a famous person, who would it be and why? Famous person, who and why? Don't overthink it. Just grab the first famous person. Do they have to be alive? I don't care. They can be. You want to eat lunch with a.
That's right, you want me to
Who? Yes, yeah, two wives.
How much do you have on your desktop in your
What they put on it when I came.
Do you have anything you've downloaded, like, no, you downloaded, I need this PDF, so it's downloaded from here. Just give it some time. It's also because everybody is trying to get it at the same time on the same
For obvious reasons, he was awesome.
You don't need it.
Eleanor
That's why we
Roosevelt,
said, well,
America's favorite first lady. Did you
we
read
kind
that
of feel like
document?
who's gonna have it.
Mark Twain. I think he's interesting. Joyce.
So very lame compared to those. Emerald Lagasse, because I make her cook my lunch too.
Here we go. Julie. Bruno Mars. Andy Mars.
I didn't know how to spell emerald, so I didn't think.
Beautiful smile, beautiful person. Despite what the news says lately.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Steve.
I didn't really stick to the question, said my wife. And she also has a beautiful smile and is a beautiful person. Yeah.
To make up all those nasty jokes.
Right, this next one is a big one, and it will tell a lot about who you are. Do you untie your shoes when you take them off?
Velcro ham.
Do you untie your shoes? Steve, yes.
Sometimes I try to untie them both at the same time.
Yes. Howard? No. No. Joyce gets You tend to be more uptight if you untie your shoes. All right, next question. This is a deep one. It also tells much about you. Stones or beetles? Stones or beetles? Now, Marcia, you know this all. Thank you, Marcia, for not letting me down. Beetles, stones, beetles, 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 stones.
And what does it say about us?
I don't know. What do you think it says about us?
That some of us are right, some of us are wrong.
No, some of you are on four. Next question. I like this one. Do you use sarcasm a lot?
A diversity exercise.
I got it. Where's your wife?
Oh, my wife.
I don't know, Melanie's did the same thing.
That's your wife right there.
Double bonus.
All right, flip the board. What do you think? That's a lame question. Never, never, never. Yes, funny. Yes, hopefully, inappropriate. That's such a teacher answer. Steve, any day now. I really do mean any day now. Who, me? Talking about. Never. All right.
I debate some of these answers.
Couple more questions. What movie have you watched the most times? What movie have you watched the most times? Specifically, why did you do this? What is it about that particular movie that makes you watch it numerous times? We got a date for All right, Justin, flip your board. Justin, what is your answer? Idiocracy, funny and prophetic. Godfather, 1, 2, or 3, or 4. I don't know how many there are. 1 or 2. And Shawshank Redemption. Yeah, that's on TV. Right. Now, wait. I forgot. Why? You said funny. Why, Laura?
Maybe not.
All right, and Steve, what's your why? And what's your answer that you erased?
He had Shawshank.
Shawshank, why?
It's on all the time.
Do what?
It's on all the time.
I like the movie. Okay, The Green Mile, very similar. Good story, good action. Okay. The Unsinkable Molly Brown. What's wrong with you? I would have not pulled that out of anywhere.
It is a good musical. I love a good musical.
Ah, okay. All right. Back to the Future. 1. Intrigue. How old are you, Howard? All right,
I'm sticking with Julia Roberts, plus that's a great life lesson on how you need to be yourself all the time and herself around. She came out of this
Gold digger?
That was not in
All
the
right,
original
Steve,
question.
you good man.
Now, I have to say, I really don't like watching movies a second time. So I already know the ending and stuff. But I do always watch the Jack Nicholson's, when he's on the stand. If that part's on as I'm going through, if I know it's coming up, I have to watch that part.
You can't handle it.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, everyone right now has to write down this movie. This is the best feel-good movie. It has subtitles, it's in French, but you'll like it.
Done. Sorry, done.
Well, I'm telling you, it's a great movie.
Is there
I'm not
cartoons?
lying. Yes, there is.
Oh, okay.
Intouchables, I-N, Intouchables.
Oh, it is good.
Write
That is
that
a
down,
good
you will not, has anyone else seen it?
I've seen it, it's a good
That's a good movie, isn't it?
movie. Watching it this
All right, this might be the last one, I'm not sure. I don't like this question, but I put it up there anyways. If you were a crayon, what color would you be? If you were a crayon, what color would you
projector?
be?
Package of eight.
Do we have to stick with 12 colors? No, crayon, no, the girls are going to be any color you like.
No, because he's on his iPad.
Okay, are we ready? Okay, red goes up. Black.
My son had to do that with her. Yeah, mine was here. I was. Either on the couch or the bed.
All right. At this exact moment, if you could be anywhere else, where would that be and why?
What's his body on? Does it look
Why did that? Okay.
At this exact moment, where would you be anywhere else and why? And Justin, fishing anywhere. Ice fishing? You probably ice fish.
Oh, Ms. Bowers.
That's exactly what I want to be. Steve, all with my best friend Sherry. Sherry is white. I don't want to assume. Joyce, someplace rare. Julie, St. John, U.S. Virgin. Nice. Fiji smells good. What exactly does Fiji smell like?
My wife has his Bath and Body Works. I'm assuming it smells like
Tropical island for obvious reasons.
I do. It's not anywhere warm.
Warm to get out of the cold. That's probably everybody's go-to. You know what happened?
Yeah, but.
All right, we're going to switch a little bit. We're going to pick up the pace a tad. I don't want you guys to overthink these next questions. Write down what comes to mind.
This is where we hand off the whiteboard, have someone else come up.
A little more serious type question. This next question, I'm pretty sure I've asked everyone before. I think as an educator, it's always critical to keep this question in mind and what you would do or need to get yourself out of this situation. Okay, you ready? Michelle, what's happening?
Mark is working on it. It's been off for 10 minutes, you just didn't notice it.
All right, we'll keep moving. Don't go when they do. What subject, and everybody try to do this as an all play, maybe these will be audience participation.
You're right.
What subject area do you struggle with the most? Specifically, what would you need to be successful or more successful in this area? Oh, look at it. I'm going to come out and give you What subject area do you struggle with the most, and what would you need specifically to get you out? Help you be more successful. Justin, you ready? Algebra, I would need a desire to do algebra. For all those algebra teachers out there struggling with a class full of unmotivated people, what would give you a desire to do algebra?
In high school, candy.
All right, Amy. Science.
I would need an interest,
What would,
because I have to do this kind of thing.
okay. All right, what would make you interested, do you think?
Probably if it was made clear how I would use that or how it was real to me.
Relevant.
Like my chemistry teacher, all girls were going to be teachers or nurses. And so if you weren't going to be a nurse, you didn't need that subject. And I wasn't going to be a nurse. And I wasn't going to do something. Yeah, teach chemistry.
Mr. Streletsky? Science. More about anatomy and molecules. So just a deeper understanding. How would you get that understanding?
It'd take more than plastic models, I guess.
But that's a good
Science teacher, because I need to better understand it, because that's all about metallurgy. I understand that, so. Get further understanding of it.
What?
Somebody.
Okay, correct. Joyce? Higher level math, how it applies to my life. Okay, so then relevance. Okay. Math, you would want it to be, you would need more hands-on manipulative.
He's timing out. His iPad's timing out.
Time to take it all in. What does that time look like? And what is it time to practice, time to read it?
I just remember when I was in school, instead of 80 problems, if I could add 10 problems and had more time to do them, then I could have figured it out a little bit better. So I only did 10 problems, and that always got me in trouble.
All right. Math. Lots of instruction and explanation.
Yes. Even though I knew how it applied to my life and I needed to learn it as a nurse, I still don't enjoy it. Not in any way, shape, or form. Because I don't understand it. Bill, can you help me?
So what would it, I mean, seriously, because we're no different than our students.
Well, I think just sitting down with someone one-on-one and saying, this is how you do this and this is why.
Okay, so more individual one-on-one?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right, Steve, reading, I'm slow and often need to read twice. Comprehension, practice. Okay, what are the common things that you're saying? What are the needs that people have? They don't get a subject area. Do you have students who don't get your subject area? What do they need? And can we give it to them? They need more time, more practice. How do you give them more time and more practice? I'm not even serious, I'm asking, how do we do that? We've got pre-test, post-test stuff, we've got kids that may not, make the learning target, I don't know. Or ones that we need to push. How do we do that? Okay. Next question. Hang on. What is the purpose of education? And I'm asking that because sometimes I think I don't think we forget, we stay focused on it, or we try to make it harder than it is. What is the purpose of education? Yeah, this is when it really gets rocket. Mike Gentile, to prepare students to succeed in the future. Okay. To train individuals for the future. All right? Howard, to prepare, to provide a better opportunity to function or thrive in society. Discovery and learning, got it? To ensure students learn in order to be contributing member of society, like it, to prepare students for life, gaining skills and knowledge. Purpose of education is to make students succeed. Okay, all right. Anything different? You guys think anything different? Additional to their answer? I'd like to draw your attention to just a little bit different side of that. A bunch of these are future focused, way out there. What's one thing we heard from kids too, or mentioned about what you need to learn is relevance. Sometimes we think too far out in the future with kids. Kids' heads, 9 times out of 10, are not out there in the future. They're more on the immediate. What do kids do? Anybody have kids that play video games? What do video games give kids? Immediate reward, immediate feedback. Do kids ever sit there and think they can't do it? They could have lost the last 40 games in a row, and they're sitting there going, they can do it. They think they can do it. I'm saying that because I think the purpose of education, sometimes we extend it out too far. The purpose of education, just a little twist that I read last week, is just to change them. They didn't know how to do something when they sat down in your class. When they leave your class after 50 minutes, they know how to do something that they didn't know how to do when they came in, or they know how to do it better. Don't overthink this purpose of education. Yes, it is all about the future, but it's more so for our purposes about Tom walked into the class, he doesn't know jack. He walks out of the class, he knows jack. He knows something that he didn't know, and he can do something that he could not do when he came in. It makes us more focused on what our job is as teachers. All right, that should give you a little bit of a clue. What is the role of the classroom teacher? What's the role of the classroom teacher? You guys come in here every single day. What is your role? Steve's got to facilitate learning. Advanced learners turn this board prematurely. Help learner understand subject and grow as an individual. Provide learning and understanding. Julie? To make student understand. To ensure student learning, facilitate learning, create, facilitate, support, inspire learning. Like that. Deliver useful instruction, maintaining order, and ensuring learning. Okay. The role is to create an environment where learning can occur, to facilitate learning. But what does that look like? What does it look like in your class? Is it happening in your class? What does the facilitation of learning look like specifically? Audience participation. What's that look like in your classroom? What's it look like? What is it? We can say it, we can talk about it, we can say to facilitate learning, but actually defining what that is, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what is that? What are you doing in your classroom that makes learning happen? Motivating, okay?
I provide an environment where students feel safe taking the risk.
Oh, that's huge, because how many, I'm going to pick on math, how many up here have had math as they didn't like it? Did you have an element of it's not safe to respond. I had it hugely in math. I wasn't, there was no way in hell I was raising my hand because the answer was going to be wrong. Okay, but that is true, and that's true generally in life. People like to feel that their answers are going to be acknowledged, safe, whatever. That's a big one. Okay, any other? What does facilitating learning look like? What are you doing constantly? Demonstrating. You're showing them. What are you showing them? Challenging. You showing them the correct way to do it or the wrong way to do it?
Well, it depends, but it's always trying to push kids to, it's not always making things easy.
Not always making things easy, sometimes leaving things out, letting them figure it out. Okay, so we're giving them a challenge, letting them figuring it out. When Stephanie said demonstrate, sometimes we're showing them things the right way. Have you ever learned how to do something better by doing it wrong? Is there value at times in an appropriate way of showing students poor quality work? Justin, did you ever show kids a shoddy, I don't know, a door that's been banged up and somebody says it's finished and you can point out 50 things that's incorrect with it?
Sometimes a lot of paint so they can see what it looks like when they don't do it right.
Okay, so they learn from seeing shoddy work. All right, good. All right. What role can assessment play in the operation of an effective learning environment? This is assessment. You're talking about what role does assessment play in the operation of an effective learning environment? Concept. Okay, let's say you get a group. What is that? What do you do if they are?
If they are, then we can either challenge them within the same concept, go bigger or better things, or we can move on. If they're not, that's the whole reteach and everything else.
And if you have what typically happens, you have 10 that are, 10 that aren't, and 10 that have 10 that are on board. Okay, evaluate methods of instruction and effectiveness. So you're looking at an assessment and that tells you what you need to do different?
Possibly what I think so.
It's never your fault.
No, it's not my fault, it's theirs.
If they master the assessment, they should be able to teach it themselves. Okay, so they should be able to talk about it, write about it, tell others about it, break it down. Cool. Student growth, future classroom planning. Okay, so future lesson planning is dependent on where the kids are now. All right. Providing info relative to what the students know so the teacher can teach what is needed. Good deal. To see if students are getting it, where I need to focus. Good deal. Laura Bowers. Feedback.
And then I started listing things that they've said. That's why I needed more microphones.
But I will tell you, your answer is very focused. I'd like to give you that feedback.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I clearly show student strengths and weaknesses, show students' current level of understanding, standard of comparison. All right, good deal. Now, does your feedback result in improved student performance? Ow. That one kind of hurts a little bit when I think about it myself in the classroom. I spent a lot of time grading papers, walking by, pointing out a couple things to a kid. Did my effort and feedback really make a difference in kids' learning? And if so, do I know that? How do I know that? Does my feedback make a difference? How do you know if your feedback makes a difference? You're providing feedback. Actually, what's your most common form of feedback? Write that down. What's your most common form of feedback? And then does it make a difference? How how do you know? You guys got my question? What's your most common form of feedback to students? Does it make a difference? How do you know? Two more quick questions. Let's start in the middle. Start at the end. Justin, what's your most common form of feedback for students? Verbal direction during the project. Most time it does, unless the student misunderstands. So yours is kind of evidence-based. You can quickly see that they've changed whatever it is they're doing, and they're doing it correctly, and then you go back and you can visually see that they're doing it differently. Okay? Laura, you question?
I mean, he has.
Then you know based on the answer and the direction.
Okay. Steve? Immediate verbal feedback.
So in other words, when they come to me and they have a product, I will give them feedback based on what I see, and then I send them back to my either make those corrections or help explain further, or go back and demonstrate what it is.
Do they ever come back? Do they ever need that verbal feedback more than once? Some do. Joyce? Questioning, the answers indicate learning. Because you're walking around, you're questioning. All right. Verbal, one-to-one time with students. Okay. Individual feedback, conversation, not group. Let's explain.
I have that with my dad's office sometimes. Re-explain a critical thinking question, whatever that way. If I do it as a group, it's only going to be the same one or two kids. Feedback, and say, well, that's going on.
Okay, so you're isolating a small
While they're working on something else.
Too much traffic here.
Discussion, reassessment, after
Thank you.
discussion. Your most common is discussion, and then after that, you would reassess to see if that discussion is effective.
Because yes, it is. I mean, sometimes it's not always immediate feedback. They have to try to do it themselves, and then they find sometimes they don't understand it. So they'll come back for a one-on-one discussion.
Okay. Steve?
Return.
Well, I gave the wishy-washy answer sometimes after the grade on an assessment, and I say that because if it's kind of a focused, it's just like one critical area, and they get that feedback, then they know, okay, I can make improvements on that, or I got that. If it's kind of like a chapter test, they get that back, they just, crumple it up and, oh, I'm a failure, I didn't do well. And sometimes,
Too late for
yeah.
them doing that, but they'll be in.
It's like, yeah.
Okay.
So sometimes the grade that doesn't necessarily, sometimes it turns them off more than it turns them on to try to do better.
In math, you say a grade on an assessment. What grade I got a C+. What does that feedback tell me? I'm in your class, I got a C+. What am I going to find on that piece of paper that you gave me?
Oh, as far as like, I missed this, and this, I mean, hopefully there's something marked wrong, so.
Okay, something marked wrong.
So I don't know that particular skill.
Okay. All right. So I'm sitting there looking, I got a C-, I missed that, I don't know how to do that.
And sometimes when you go over it, the student has the aha moment, oh, I made a stupid mistake, I can do this.
Okay.
But
Stupid mistake.
Yeah,
but
sometimes the
I
student
didn't
just really just didn't get it.
A purpose of feedback, sometimes that I think helps when we're actually providing it, is if you think of the phrase next steps. It's okay, I mean, if you got it wrong, but if I got it wrong and I still don't know what to do, I'm still stuck. I'm still in the same place that I was. I need next steps. I need do this first, do this second, do this third. Okay, does that make sense? Because feedback such as C- or great job or needs work. It's kind of elusive. And as a learner, as a student in high school, how long am I going to struggle with that to determine what Mr. Gentile means? 2 seconds, long enough to wad it up and throw the trash. All right, so the more specific we can be in our feedback, the better. It's got to provide next steps. All right, two last questions. They're similar. How do we set up students for success? In your classroom, you are going to be teaching a brand new block, whatever. What is it that you're doing right from the get-go that is going to best ensure students are going to succeed? How do we ensure student success?
You can have that, Michelle. That last one was really mine, but yeah. You can have that.
All right, Justin. Yes, decode it.
Okay. Level of competency needs to equal.
You guys listen up.
At the beginning, and need to scaffold the steps. So
Oh.
they move from beginning to the end, it makes sense.
Okay.
Take that step each time.
Teaching something new, you're determining what does Tom know, what does Tom not know. Based on that, then you present me with a series of steps. Okay. Laura? Build interest and motivation. Okay, that would be a first thing that you would be doing. How would you do that? What would that look like?
Well, I think your own enthusiasm, your own way you start. I know, when I would begin a certain unit, I could feel in myself that I was selling it because of my own interest, and then I would see that reflected in the students. So you try to take that into your approach for everything.
Okay. And that, I would say one thing when we look about motivation, I think that's very clear. Our own level of energy in the classroom makes a huge difference in how much energy you're getting out of the students. Okay, Steve, set clear expectations and goals. Okay? Are those just kept in your plan book? Where do those goals and expectations wind up?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, where are those goals? Do you give them to the students?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you do that?
Well, I'll give an example of a project that, Tina and I have been working on together the last week or so. And bringing the students in, actually explaining, what the purpose of this project is and being clear about what our outcome wants to be and how we are going to get there. So explain the steps, work through the steps, and then just be very clear about what our expectations are with the end product.
Okay. Goals are up there, purpose is up there, let's say relevance is up there, and the steps. Okay, Joyce? Provide multiple instructional methods. Okay, so before you start, you've got multiple ways to get to the kids and many opportunities to demonstrate learning. So I screwed up the first 3 times, I've got a couple more to demonstrate what I know. Okay, multiple times, all that's going in. All right, Julie? Positive learning, classroom, lab.
I'm on the team, so it's okay if they don't get it the first time I'm here to teach
Okay.
them. Let them know it's okay to fail, not do exactly right to the goal to get there.
Okay, so again, what I hear when you're saying that is kind of a coaching model, and I go back to you're creating an environment, a safe environment to learn. Okay? All right, good. Reassess. back to what Justin says, engagement, what Laura said, and you're demonstrating. What are you demonstrating?
Real life application, or just demonstrating how much I enjoy what we're learning about.
Okay. Marsha, detailed instruction, demonstration, providing comfortable learning environment, non-threatening. So you're providing detailed instruction. What are you demonstrating?
Whatever the skill might be, or how it applies, might apply to their future career.
Okay. How do you get an environment that's comfortable, non-threatening? How do you do that? What do you do? You walk into your classroom that first day of school in the fall. How do you make that a comfortable environment?
Well, I think that you have to be, when I say non-threatening, I mean, you have to be friendly. You don't have to be their friend, but you have to be friendly. You have to appear caring and compassionate, and show them that you truly do care about them and what they are about to learn. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense. Are kids ever sensitive? Because a lot of times, how often do you have to tell the kids they're doing it wrong? A
Yeah,
lot.
I think that
Kids ever sensitive about that? Kids ever biting about that? So it's not just what we do, sometimes it's how we do it. How do I tell this student that their thesis has nothing to do with anything, and it's completely crazy? How do I do that? It's how I do it, it's what I do, it's that I give them the next step, something to hang on to. It's also my demeanor, what that is like. Okay, create an environment that allows the student to succeed.
And that encompasses a lot of, the scaffolding, the personality or energy that you have, and also kind of the idea of like, none of us is as smart as all of us, at the beginning of the year, when you're talking about setting the tone, I know I have students out there that know a lot more about cars than I do. And as you go throughout the year, there are students that know a lot more about the medical terms than I do. A lot of students know a lot more about the cosmetology ends of things, cutting hair and dyeing hair and all the science that goes with that. So it's okay to be human and let them know that, hey, you guys are the experts in some of those fields that I'm not, So that kind of lets everyone understand that, hey, some people are smarter than others at certain things.
Okay. Good deal. I think that goes a long way, kind of a human element in the classroom. Okay, last question. And this one, be pointed, this is the final question. We're going to go back to your struggling area. What do you struggle with? I want you to think of a student right now in your head who is a failure, failing. They just have failed repeatedly, they're D's, they fail, they are not performing well in your class. What is it specifically that you might do with that individual to help them turn their failure around? What would you do with Susie, Sam, Sally, John, who is currently demonstrating repeated failure in your classroom? What would you do with that?
I'm thinking in my head from basically August 23rd to May 30th, but you get.
Okay. Take time, let them know I care about their success. Okay. What is that time? What are you doing in that time?
Spend some time individually, maybe catch them as they're walking through, pull them aside and say, hey, I noticed maybe this was happening in class today, and is there something going on? I'll do that occasionally with a student struggling, maybe something going on at home or whatever. Let them know, or maybe they didn't bring something to class. Came to class without their book bag or paperwork or this kind of stuff. Yeah, there's something going on there.
Okay.
Something's happening.
Okay. Joyce? Spend time, try to work with what the student knows and build on that success. Okay, very good. Julie? student meeting with them, a positive improvement plan. Okay, so you're actually setting out with that student some goals or some next steps, which I'm going to assume then you would be revisiting with that student. Okay. Personal approach, ask them about their personal goals. Okay, where do you want to be next year? Where do you want to be in 5 years? And what will it take to get them there? Okay, kind of, so you don't like government at all, but a grade in my class is your ticket to where you do want to be.
Well, it's on them to come up with their own plan and then realize it.
Okay, so you're involving them. Good. Improve, focus, one-on-one time, suggest, implement, counseling. Okay, what's it?
Well, a lot of times there's external environments that actually, I think, keep them from focusing on what's going on in the classroom. And if you can provide them with counseling or help get the counseling that they need, that helps improve their focus while they're in the classroom.
Okay.
And the one particular student I'm thinking of could definitely use that.
Okay.
My team's very similar to the team down there. Talk to them first.
And make small successive steps. Okay. Let me dovetail very quickly off of that. The one thing, it's very, sometimes when we're working with a struggling student, we're always looking for the reason. Sometimes it's a soft reason. It has to do with outside. One thing we can't forget, and we've all kind of touched on it in one way, is you're going back to when's the last time they've been successful. You've got to find that breaking point between their success and their failure. When is it that they begin to struggle? And if you do that, then you can provide them, you're kind of diagnosing their problem. This is where you left off being successful. This is where I think you can begin being successful, and then you provide them feedback. This is what I want, this is part of their plan. They had an individual plan. This is what I want you to do first, and this is what I want you to do second. Okay? All right. First, a round of applause for our great job. The other thing I want you guys to recognize, did anyone in here in the last hour read a book about all of this? Did we go to any over professional development? No. The expertise that we talk about exists in our school. I hope that you guys are talking to one another about these issues, and I hope you're paying attention to them, and I hope it's actually playing out in your classroom. All right? You guys have the answer. You guys are and have the magic bullets to helping kids be more successful in your classroom. Right now, if you go to your email, I scanned in an article. It's by Rick Stiggins. It's called Assessment Through Students' Eyes. The title's a little more sappy than the article actually is. You should be able to access it, and if not, we've got some copies right here, hard copies. Who might need a hard copy? Just when you need a hard copy, let me know.
Need a hard copy?
Yeah.
All right, as you're reading through that, what I would like you to do is this will show up on the screen here hopefully in a minute. I want you to read the article. It won't take you that long, maybe 15 minutes at the outside. I want you, when you're reading that article, to come up with 3 takeaways. Three takeaways, 2 questions, and 1 action step. Something that you can and will implement in the next week.
It's mine.
Oh, I was just saying, it's not me. Okay.
You're gonna need to go off the Apple and come back onto it, but you can use mine for now if you want.
Okay. 3 takeaways in the article, 2 questions, and 1 action step. The reason that we're kind of focusing on this is right now we're very aware that we gave a pre-assessment and we're about to give a post-assessment coming up. We're about to work on creating that post-assessment. But we don't live in pre-assessment and post-assessment. We live in the land in between. So if we're not teaching and the kids aren't learning as best they can in our classrooms, those 2 brackets on the end don't matter a whole lot. So I wanted to focus a little bit of time today on what is it that we need to be doing in the classroom that's going to help students indeed meet their learning objective. In this article, and I've said this before, There is a magic bullet. I guarantee there is a magic bullet in this article that if you fully implement it consistently and energetically, you will notice a difference in the learning that's going on in your classroom. I guarantee it. I flat out guarantee it. There's a magic bullet in this article. Okay? There's only one thing. There's multiple things in there, but there's only one thing. So give me 3 takeaways from the article as you read, 2 questions and 1 action step. And take however long you need to read, hopefully no more than 15. 3 takeaways. What are your 3 takeaways from that article? 3 takeaways. Anybody?
Involving students in the process.
Okay, 1 is involving students in the process. What would you do to do that, to make that happen?
Well, I love the idea of the student-generated rubrics.
Okay. From looking at both high-quality work and low-quality work, they're generating what good quality work should look like.
Should look like, I love that.
Okay, they're probably more apt to get to that good quality work when they're coming up with it as opposed to you just telling them what it is.
Exactly.
All right, another takeaway from the article, another idea.
Student confidence
Student confidence
from assessment.
from assessments, okay? What, tell me more.
Just building student confidence, focus on what they are learning
Okay,
and let them know that they are learning. And then go back and assess that to you.
okay. I think that can look like, a lot of times is, look at what you know now that you didn't know a week and a half ago, or 2 weeks ago. Or a really cool thing is, look at what you came into this class not knowing in August, and look at how much you know now. That is a cool thing. That, we were talking about motivation, that's a motivator for people, I would think. Okay, another takeaway.
The teacher teaching the students how to set their goals along and the transparency of those achievement goals.
Okay,
The teacher setting that and modeling that, and then the student
doing the same thing. Okay. Steve?
Kind of what I was gonna say, the shared achievement targets, so the students and the teacher both know kind of where they're heading and, what they need to know.
I think it's easier to assess if everybody's in the know about what it is that they have to know and be able to do. And that means everybody.
And I know by this day, whatever the thing is, I know I have to know this, and this. I think that, you know, good planning for everyone.
And if they're using the language of what it is, give me something in math they need to know.
Distance formula. I won't make you
Distance
say
formula.
Pythagorean theorem today.
Distance for, I mean, but even you can reinforce in the targets the language of the subject matter, which reinforces their knowledge of the terminology too. All right, another takeaway from the article, Steve?
Students need to know why and where they're making mistakes.
Say that again.
Sometimes they need to know why and where they're making mistakes.
Okay, you made this mistake here because of this. Okay, that's good, as opposed to a general C-. Doesn't really give you a lot of information. Ruth?
I was just gonna say, I love where they said that today's schools are focused on how all students should meet the standards. You know, how it's so old school, and I can even remember a few teachers who have since retired from here, but that when they making comments like that what keeps them coming back every day is that one kid in class who's really getting what they're saying, and that's just so old school. I mean, we now really focus on that all of the students are getting it, and
Right.
I just think that's important.
And let's take that back Ruth, to your SLOs. Does all of your students have the same SLO? They didn't all come in at the same place. They have different SLOs. But are they all expected to demonstrate growth and achievement? Yes, they are. So that does modify, change a little bit how we think and how we do things. You know, I used to always aim for the middle of the road. Figure I'd hit everybody that way. But you gotta also get those low-end kids and the high-end kids. Sometimes the ones that are ignored the most are your high-end kids. They do it anyways. What would they do if we gave them an extra bit of attention and guidance and next steps? Probably a lot more than we would think. Okay.
Well, I just wanted to say that I really like the way this article focuses on the emotional aspect of the learner. You know, you can learn a lot just by maybe watching their faces as you return a test or some type of an assessment.
to them. You know, if they repeatedly are not getting it and they toss it aside, and just like just by the look on their face, if they say, you know what, I'm done, I don't care, when it talks about the learning stops, or if they really still emotionally show, almost inwardly, that they're very disappointed in their work, that they still are interested in, learning how to do that. I think there's a difference that you can see in the students' look.
But I think they're more apt to be interested in what to do if I, as the teacher, maybe took a couple minutes and sat down with them and said, hey, you got this on the test. Here are some specific things that you can do right now to show improvement. I've given them something to do, not just a grade. All right, any questions from the article? Anybody come away from the article going,
Well, I did, when they were talking about, and you've talked about it too, about parallel questions. Creating, teaching information that then allows students to go further with a test question. I do that all the time, and it frustrates the heck out of my students. I'm just wondering, how do you do that without frustrating them? Because they feel like you're tricking them by, you're not really, they see it as you're not really reviewing for the test because, wait a minute, all you talked about was this, but yet on the test, I'm seeing pieces from the Constitution, and they act like
they haven't seen it?
Because they haven't
teaching
seen
them
it.
to think.
Well, they get very frustrated with that.
Right.
So how do you? So my question is, how do you teach them to think using parallel questions on tests instead of actual questions that you review without frustrating them?
The one thing I would say is and I've just read a couple articles on this, with how far can you challenge a kid before they shut down?
Correct.
Okay, because that's something that we have to be very aware of for all the learners at whatever level they are. How much more can I ask them to do before I shut down? Let me ask you the question. In your area, your subject area that you struggle with, what does it take you to shut down? Okay, for me in technology, and this is not working, I shut down immediately, and I hand it to Michelle and tell Michelle, make this stop happening. I don't know what's happening, but make it stop happening. But you see what I'm saying? We've got to be aware of where is that threshold. Things that I have read is you can push a kid 10 to 15% more than they think they know. You go much beyond that, and what does that look like in the classroom? I don't know. That's where you got to figure what does that 10 to 15% look like. I don't really know. But you can push that kid a little bit farther than they think they can go. The other thing, Ruth, I would be very transparent with them. I'm teaching you to think. I want you to think. I don't want you to spit back a recall answer. I am happier when you demonstrate thinking, even if that thinking is slightly askew and not 100% accurate. I can help you be accurate. Okay? Any other questions from that article?
It just kind of goes back to what you were talking about, Ruth, as far as getting kids to kind of take that extra step. Like, I tell them up front, I'm going to try like heck to trick you. And I think a lot of times when we actually talk quite a bit about their process, and it's not just here's the thing that we're going to learn in class. It's this is your learning reaction. This is what has typically happened to you in the past. And we talk about what roadblocks they have had in the past, and then we talk about how can we find ways around their personal roadblocks to learning. And that's kind of what we're doing right now, especially. And you're right, students get really frustrated with that because I set the roadblock right in front of them and I say, okay, now figure out a way around it. And they're wanting me to give them the answers, and I can't because it's their own personal roadblock. So I say, well, try this. That didn't work. Well, that's the thing. Try this. And it's about kind of it's almost like doing an experiment with their own personal learning. And getting them to get past those roadblocks is hard because it takes, like, well, I mean, it takes repetition and repetition and repetition. And so you end up with this scenario where, I don't know, like students eventually get there, but some get there a whole lot faster than others. And it's just a matter for me of pointing out, like, this is what your typical response is to what has happened. Now let's try something different. You've done this, it didn't work, what now?
I really like this example they gave concerning the elementary students for math. And here's the answers I got right, here's the answers I got wrong, and helping the student then, I identify, why did I get those answers wrong? I think that goes a long way in teaching them to think about their own learning.
Well,
That's, you've got to set that up, you actually have to practice that with kids.
when we talk a lot about students, we want them to be responsible. We use that word a lot. Well, I don't even know, what does that look like? What does responsible look like in the classroom? To me, it looks like owning their learning. Well, what's that look like? How do I get a kid to own their learning? First of all, I gotta give them the learning target. I gotta show them what strong and weak work looks like. And then I've gotta assess, and I've gotta constantly keep that feedback loop going. The more feedback they get, the more specific I can identify exactly right now, today, what is happening in this classroom. Tom the student can. Tom the student can also tell you that I completely blew the last assessment, and these are the two things I have to focus on to do better on the next one that's coming. All right, if I can do that, I can own my learning. If I can't identify what the target is, what we're supposed to be learning, and I sure as heck can't tell you what I've got to do better, I'm not going to own my own learning. In fact, I'd probably just shut down because I'm not following you. Or I'm following you enough to make you think I'm following you. Okay, action steps, very, very quickly. What are some action steps that you can implement or continue implementing this week with your students?
I did like in the first scenario, setting up what is a good sample, example, and a bad, and then using a higher level, like analysis, kinds of activities for students to compare, contrast, in order to create the criteria for what is good. And I think that, at least, I think I tend to overlook what is bad in terms of presenting those things to students and focus too much on this is, what is good, and then we talked about what is good, but not in terms of what is bad, maybe enough. So, just being able to use that in order for students to create, to understand what makes work good, what makes it quality, and to be able to generate their own standards for that.
How will you remember to do that? I'm being 100% honest because we're very busy people and we're very patterned people. And you're apt to go, oh my God, it's Tuesday a week from now and I haven't done anything with that. How are you going to remember to do that action step?
Well, okay, so in the questions category, that would be one of my questions in terms of the type of content that I teach, because some of it is very hands-on, and I mean, I can think like, okay, I can have students, do a unit on vegetables and make green beans, and we can talk about, okay, what's,
This is a very sad green beans.
yeah, but then on the other hand, when we talk about management skills, then we're talking about leadership and motivation, and I'm trying to have students grasp those concepts. That is a little bit different, but in terms of discussion, and also on the question or on the line of questions, one of the notes that I mean is how can I actually make this work? How can I have all students participate in the conversation? How can they all care about green beans or motivating employees or but to kind of put it in that framework, I think, is more meaningful to the students anyway. So I'm definitely just going to try to work it in the way I plan.
Okay. You've got a lot of enthusiasm for it. I think you will do it. All right, any other? Darren?
This actually comes from one of the responses from Howard, and the article as well, but I check in.
Primarily just Howard.
Well, yeah, but that's what spawned the idea. Then as reading it, I see how it fits in here, but I check in with each and every student multiple times during the class, and whether it's I walk up to them, check what they're doing, or they ask a question, or however it works out, every student has contact every day on multiple occasions. But what I don't have is private, individualized contact with each student, and not that that needs to happen every day, but at least I think, I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, why don't I actually, have work for the students to do, and then take the students aside each one and say, okay, look, where are we going? Where are you, and checking in with them individually to try to make sure I'm driving them in the right direction. It's more of a, what do you need? Here's what you're doing. And so, but actually taking the time to speak with each one.
I'm going to push you one step further with that, because I think sometimes we'll do these things. I mean, you could have an individual conference with everybody, and check it off your list and everybody's happy and that's great. I had individual conferences with every student. You have to be intentional about when you're doing it, not just doing it, but how are you doing it? You're really paying attention in that conference, and I would say at some point after that conference, you've got to follow up again with that student on the specific things that happened in that conference, okay? All right, good. Any other, yes?
I'm all for that, and I've done that, but it takes a ridiculous amount of time to do it right. To pull their grades, look at their academics, have a conversation about the whole ball of wax, takes a half an hour, 40 minutes. To lay it out there for them, ask them questions, and take the time to hear what they have to say. Takes a ton of time.
My only thought with that, and I don't know if it, I really don't, I don't know if it helps with the time, it's chunking it and making it embedded in what's going on all the time. But with doing that, you'd even have to be, I think, much more intentional about paying attention. You know, it's like you drive home, you didn't pay attention to how on earth you drove home, but you know you got home. You have a conference, you have no idea, you hang up with someone who put a gun to your head and said, what did you talk about in that conference? I don't know, I just did it with 30 kids. So I don't know, I don't have a real good answer. My response would be, as opposed to taking a half hour, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, that's very focused. And, you know, take your grade book around and somehow indicate what the content in shorthand, what the content was of that conference. You know, I don't know, play with it. Anything else? Yeah.
And to go along with that, though, some kids are already on top of their own stuff. Some kids are already on that winning streak. Maybe just focus on the ones that aren't there. Focus on the ones that definitely need the help.
Well, yes, and I will tell you, in the whole world of value added, which if you ever hear that, you want that middle group. You want whoever's on the border between getting it and not getting it. So yes, because sometimes you can spend all the time with the kid that's not going to get it. You still want them to grow to meet their achievement target, their SLO, but you also want the high kids to grow too. So it's kind of a catch-22. But I go back to what Ruth said. He's just appeared on us. All students all the time. But I get exactly what you're coming from.
That's the perfect chance to get those kids that are succeeding in your class, to get them to another level. That might appear to be bored because they already get it, or whatever, then that 3-minute, 4-minute conversation can be about something that's a little bit higher learning. You can take that critical thinking to another level, where they're explaining everything absolutely in detail to you and how you can apply it to whatever they're interested in. So.
Yeah, one thing they talked about in the article is student-led parent-teacher conferences. And something I would like to do as a special ed end is, in Florida, we always had student-led IEPs. From 9th grade on up, the student led their IEP meetings. And that's something that I would like to possibly get to do in the future with the students.
Okay. Brian?
The comment I was going to make was I think the two most important paragraphs in the entire article are at the bottom of the second page. And it kind of goes around to what you were talking about earlier. The assessments for learning and the student's role. And the paragraph that says the student's role, I wrote beside it, this has to happen or there will not be success, and you can't provide that. What you can provide is a sense of working with the student and that you have to own this. And how are we going to, like you said, students owning their grade is individualized instruction. It is then realizing, okay, I've got one student who's, quite frankly, barely literate. He is not going to be held to the standard of some of my students who are well beyond the level of my class. But when each one of them owns the grade and their capabilities and what they can do, then there's some success and some leeway in terms of achievement that each of them can make that is successful and important. And that's something that you almost have to put it back on the kid. We've all had a student come up and go, why did you give me an F? Whoa, 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 whoa. What did you do to get this grade? Let's talk about that. It's the rare child who goes, yeah, I'll own that F, that's what I want. That is an accurate picture of me. Most of them will not be happy with that. They might not be able to articulate it in that manner. But if they have a feeling that you are interested in this not being the reflection of them, most will give you some effort.
And that last part, the interested in it, when you have an individual conference, I don't care if it's 30 seconds or 30 minutes, how you convey to that student their grade or their next step, so where they got off track or where they're really on track, tells that student that you care about their learning, and they're much more apt to care about their own learning seriously if they know that you care about it.
And if you're doing what it says in that paragraph that begins, assessment for learning, yada, 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 if that's happening, you're meeting the responsibility that you as a good teacher should be doing. And that way the responsibility can be talked about to the kid. Okay, I've met you here.
Yeah.
Now what are you doing? And then it becomes a process that hopefully they buy into.
All right, Marcia, and then we're going to close and talk about this paragraph very, very quickly.
I just wanted to say that sometimes if I see that a student is not getting something, but there is another student that is maybe further ahead of that student, I like the thought of peer-to-peer interaction, that one student can actually go over and maybe, I don't know, for whatever reason, they can do a better job of explaining that to the student instead of me who's going into too much depth, or I don't know quite how to explain that, but I will do that in the classroom, and sometimes they adhere better to another student's explanation than they do mine. Does a lot of people do that? I mean, do you use?
A lot of times,
Yeah.
a student in your class is going to remember when the light bulb finally went on, and they remember that key moment, so then they can explain it to another person the way they got it.
Yes.
So that's what you just said. It's good.
Going off
Thank
on
you.
what Marcia says, it says, you know, in this student-friendly language, well, it happens in my classroom, our level of thinking is different than
Yes.
most of the students, and we're speaking about, whatever topic we're on, some students, I know what she's talking about, and some students are, doe-eyed look, and then you get those students, now how would you explain to some students who don't understand what I'm saying, how would you explain that to your peers, and you have that student say it in their peers' language, and I have that happen
Yes.
often in my classroom.
I like this teaching tool too. Sometimes it is have them teach it to a specific audience. How would you tell a kindergartner this concept? And just then you're doing it in this general whole group activity that somebody where along the line is going to have an aha moment with it. Mary Kay?
And sometimes I have them do maybe like a 3 page PowerPoint and teach one small little thing to the whole class.
Yes, I will do that too.
If you go back to the basics of creating that safe learning environment where students can take risks, there is an art and a finesse to not punishing the student for not being able to learn, and having the students not feel punished, and how they then own that learning. If that learning is, if they're being punished, or, well, they didn't get it because they weren't motivated, then that's that, well, I've got to look in the mirror moment as the instructor to say, what am I doing first? But there is an art to that.
I like the fact that you use that word art and finesse. Do you guys think of yourself as a skilled artist? A highly skilled person in the classroom? Because the evidence that I saw up here this morning and the conversation that we've been having lets me know there's a great amount of expertise and fine artistry in the art of teaching in this room. We just have to access it all the time and be aware of it and share it. All right, I want to focus on that paragraph that Brian talked about here, and I will tell you, did anyone find the magic bullet? It's a magic bullet. Anybody know? Right here. Share achievement targets with the student. Okay, I will tell you, someone extremely near and dear to my heart, who happens to be a math teacher at Licking Heights High School, and it's my wife. Her name is Catherine. First of all, it's because it's coming from me. But when I talked to her about learning targets, she came home one day and she goes, my principal, and I know when she starts out with my principal, it's like, okay, take a seat. But she's talking about my principal is having us do learning targets on the board. She goes, I've had a learning target on my board for the past 50 years, but because I didn't have the word goal with it, it wasn't good enough. So she's now writing goal. I said, that's great. I said, that's great. That's lovely. I should have stopped. I continued. And I said, that's lovely that you have that written on your board, but do you talk about it in your classroom? Now, I will say this, my wife is an extremely superior math teacher. Very, very good. She hits that learning target. She's just not aware that she's doing it, honestly, what I believe, what I can't think. But I will tell you, I've seen it happen. It will change the culture of a building. It will change the culture of learning. And it cannot be, because I've also been in buildings where you have a Nazi administrator who everyone will have that learning target written down. Fabulous. Everybody has that learning target written down, and absolutely jack is happening with it, other than it's written down. Okay? So it's not just about writing it down. You've got to, and we've talked about this a couple times, you've got to share repeatedly what that learning goal is for that 55, 56 minute, however long time frame that you have, 2-hour time frame. What is it specifically that Tom is going to know and be able to do when he walks out of that classroom on that day? I should be able to tell you, not what we did as a learner, what did I learn? If I can't tell you what I learned that day, I don't know if I learned it. All right? You've got to be transparent with that. You've got to share that with the students. It's much more easy to assess a student if you've been clear and mindful of what that learning target is. Okay? That is the magic bullet. I swear to you, it will change everything. And you'll know it when the kids start talking about it. When they start talking about what that learning goal is, learning target for that time period is. They'll stop asking you what it is we're going to do today, and they'll start asking you what it is we're going to learn today. Different content areas have different. Let's take language arts, for example. You might hit the same learning target repeatedly, okay, because of the skill-based nature. Mathematics is more cumulative and growing. You're going to have different ones, all right? But it's the continuous communication of that learning goal for a period of time. I don't care what it is. Don't make the mistake, though, of saying, yeah, this is my learning target for the next 3 weeks. That's not going to cut it in terms of really being an effective piece. The other part is, and they talk about student-friendly language. A lot of people will do the I can statement. You'll get the vantage point from, that's childish, to I get that. Okay? Yeah.
Tom, one of the things you said fairly early this morning that I thought was really important is, what does the student leave the class knowing that they didn't know when they were at, I think you wanted them to know Jack, and they hadn't known Jack before. But I think that all ties in together is, what is it I want you to know and be able to do when you leave class today?
Well, in some time, I've been to trainings for learning targets. 3 days worth of training for learning targets. You can go in that depth, and it actually is kind of quite cool. But that's all a learning target is. People like to make rocket science out of it. It's not. Just think and write. I don't care what language, I don't care how pretty it is, just start getting it down on paper and in your mind and coming out your mouth. What is it that students know and be able to do when they leave? Not 3 weeks from now. That's too big of a target. Okay,
and one more thing, Tom, that then guides the activities. And in previous professional developments, we talked a lot about an activity for the sake of an activity versus an activity that's very clearly leading to a learning outcome.
A big question you can ask your students at the end of a day, end of whatever, is, did this activity meet our learning target? Be that transparent with your teaching. Or did we just waste our time today? Or was there not a match-up between the learning target and the activity? Ask your kids. Student-friendly language, I don't care, just make it clear. And that's, we hit that. The other piece that I think is critical, exemplary work. They have a picture. Don't you guys want to know, when you're given a task, what did he say? What does he mean? Is this what he wants? You're giving it to them up front. And you're also showing them what you don't want. And they will have, that will encourage, will promote, prompt an aha moment. This work, not good. This work, good. Move to the good side. All right? Frequent self-assessments. Okay, students can self-assess themselves. They will do more Descriptive feedback. Okay, this is the only thing I really want you to remember from descriptive feedback, and I said it earlier, next steps. Next steps. What does that kid have to do next to continue being successful or more successful? That's what your feedback has to provide. A C- gives a general, it doesn't give anything specific. So think specificity with that. Okay, that is it. What I want to do very quickly, like within a minute, we're going to get through these. I want you on your paper to write this down. Don't overthink it. Just do it. What are your students learning tomorrow? I want you to write that down right now. What are they learning tomorrow? Not what are they doing. What are they learning tomorrow? And if they're in different places, just grab a hand. What are they learning tomorrow? Next question, how might you communicate that learning target to the students? How might you do that? How would you do that? How would you, and I'm going to preface the communicate with the word effectively. Effectively communicate that learning target with the students. Because you can put it up on the board, and if nobody pays attention to it, I would question the effectiveness of that communication. What are they learning tomorrow? How might you communicate that? Third, along with this paragraph, is there an opportunity to show the students strong and weak work? How? Tomorrow. Is there an example to show them this is what I want, this is what I don't want, and even finer, this is kind of there but can be improved. How would you show them what is expected? This is strong work, this is weak work. Is there an opportunity to do that tomorrow?
Tom, what was the second one again?
How might you communicate the learning targets to students? We've got what are they learning? How might you communicate the learning targets to the students? Is there an opportunity to show strong and weak work? Okay, fourth, in what manner will you provide feedback to the students? Tomorrow, in what manner will you provide feedback to the students? We heard up here earlier, there was a lot of oral feedback to students. My only caution with that, and I know you get tossed between, I can't write everything down, some type of system. Oral feedback tends to get lost, okay? I may not be a great listener, and if someone comes by and gives me feedback, unless there's something revolutionary in that, it's gone. It just is gone. I don't know how to remember it. So maybe your oral feedback, if Steve's going around giving oral feedback, he says, Tom, write these 3 things down. All right? He didn't write them down. The student wrote them down. The student's the one that needs to write them down. Okay? Steve can come back a half hour later and say, Tom, I need to see those 3 things I wrote down. How many of these have you done? Okay? Student is doing it. I'm giving it verbally. All right, last one. For tomorrow, you guys have a struggling learner right now in your class, okay, with tomorrow's lesson. How will you coach, encourage that struggling learner? What are you specifically going to do? Okay, the questions again. What are they learning tomorrow? How might you communicate the learning target to the student? Is there an opportunity tomorrow to show strong and weak work? In what manner will you provide feedback? How will you coach or encourage the struggling learner? All right, who would like to stand and deliver all 4 questions? Anybody? Anybody game? Anybody? Before I go one at a time, call on somebody. Anybody? Jill!
Do I really have to stand?
Yes.
That sounds like
My
my students.
volunteering then.
That sounds like my students.
Okay, Jill, what are your students learning tomorrow?
We're starting to talk about moles in chemistry, not like the little animal or anything, but one is. And we're talking about how to calculate molar mass.
Okay, so an I can statement might be something. You don't have to use I can statements for all in a second. An I can statement would be, I can calculate
molar mass.
Molar mass. Okay, is that something they will be able to do by the end of tomorrow?
Yes.
Beautiful. So a kid could leave, ching, check that off. I can calculate molar mass.
Yep.
Lovely. All right. How are you going to communicate that?
I typically, well, it's always written on the board, but tend to, when it's something new, discuss why it's important and how they're going to use it, at least in the future of our class.
Okay.
Because a lot of this stuff is at the level where it's going to be done for them, even if they're in the medical field or anything like that. But it's good to have an appreciation of what somebody else has done for you.
Okay, so you're talking, it's written on the board, you're talking about it. Okay, do the students ever write it down? I mean, they may not.
It's usually, whenever we do notes and stuff, it's built into that introduction piece.
Okay.
So typically, yeah, they do write.
Okay, and the reason I ask is learning targets tend to just get lost if we're not paying attention to them. You've got to pay attention to them first. Students also have to pay attention to them and be asked about them. Okay, is there an opportunity to show strong and weak work?
Unless I screw up the math and give them a problem where the math is done wrong, not really. Because, I mean, it's not
that kind quite.
Here are the steps, follow these steps, and you multiply and then you add.
Is there a common mistake that
I do
students
tend
might
to
make?
bring that up. And
So I'm just saying a weak piece of work might show that common mistake and say, hey, this is what many students do, don't do it. When you get to this point, pay close attention. I don't know. But there's kind of an opportunity.
a little bit.
Okay, all right. In what manner will you provide feedback?
We do a lot of examples where we'll start with, I completely do the example for them, and then we go to the, you try step 1, let's talk about step 1, you try step 2. And then we go to the, you do the whole problem, and let's talk about what the answer's supposed to be and how you got it. And then I typically on this section do a lot of like an exit ticket type thing, where they try an example by themselves, give me their feeling on how they did about it, and then I look at those and it guides where I go the next day.
Where typically, historically, have you had to go on the next day?
With this unit, or this lesson, they typically get it.
Okay, they
So
typically
I
get
end
it.
up with probably about 96 to 97% of my students telling me they feel good about it.
Okay, and I just asked that question because that, wherever they've gone in the past, typically these guys are gonna go, and you hit them from the get-go.
Right.
Okay, how will you encourage the struggling learner? Tom is in your class, I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't care.
Thanks. Usually in this part, most of my students, at least, it's a simple enough activity that when they're doing their practice problems and I'm walking around, historically they get it. So historically it's just pointing out a couple of things to people as I watch what they're doing. My students are also very good, they sit at tables with 3 other people or around that, and they're very good at asking peers questions. And I have Marcia's students, so they are very used to asking other students if they got the same thing, which I encourage because that way I can't be at 26 different students' tables at the same time. So it helps there, and I like to listen to what they say to each other. So first off, I know that they're getting the right answers from their peer. But secondly, I learn a lot on how they talk to their peers, and then I can kind of do the same thing with other students and see if they, get that word in better.
Okay, I've heard you say a couple times, they typically get it, they typically get it, or typically they tell me, 90-some% are getting it.
I'm not worried about that.
And I don't know the answer to this question. I'm asking you. If they typically get it, can you challenge them by that 10 to 15% a little bit with something additional that's related that they would learn something valuable from? But is there an opportunity because they get it, because they know it, they get it quickly? Is there something you could do with them to push them?
This unit is based on that. First off, they have to finally get it. It typically takes me, and again, there's the word typically, about a day to get all of them to that
Where
level.
they need to be.
Yeah, so that day's lessons, it takes the whole time.
Okay.
But then we start using it where it doesn't straight out say, you have to calculate molar mass to do this. But in the question, if they don't calculate it, they can't do the next stuff.
Okay.
So it leads into more challenging.
I'm just saying that would be a great, to me, what you just said would be a great place. I know how to do this quickly. I learned it in the first 15 minutes. You hand me a couple things where I have to discover when I have to do it. That would, to me, that would be a challenge. That would be taking it a little bit to the next level. So. Okay, good enough. All right, the reason that we spent a good amount of time talking about this morning is I don't want us to get lost in this pre-assessment, post-assessment, SLO. Those are just markers about where our kids are. We need to talk and spend a lot of time and a lot of our energy and our expertise on how do we get kids from where they are in the beginning to where we want them and need them to be. All kids achieving. All right, so that's what we talked about. I won't tell you because it's gone off my screen, the paragraph that used to be there. No,
It's there, it's right there, what are you talking about?
that is, oh, now I've got a, what is that?
That's
Whatever.
what I'm using.
You guys were sent this in an email, all the questions, so you've got these. If you'll go to the very last screen that looks like that, it has what we just walked through, those steps, okay? I would greatly encourage you, wherever it is that you're doing your planning, however you do your planning, if you want to change your practice and you're like me, I'm going to be 3 weeks from now going, oh yeah, I did have that really great idea 3 weeks ago and completely forgot about it. Put these questions somewhere where you see your planning. Okay? Again, what's the learning? What are the students learning? How am I going to communicate that in a learning target? And again, you can't just write it down. It's going nowhere. Third, is there an opportunity to show strong and weak work? In what manner am I going to provide feedback? What's that feedback going to look like? How descriptive can I be? And how am I going to encourage that struggling learner? Because the next thing we're going to do is you're going to roster your kids who are on your SLO, and we're going to, you may already have this done, but what we need to do now is determine in quick fashion how many of our kids are on target to meet their SLO. What markers have I used? It can't just be your gut reaction. Okay, I will tell you, I'll be very honest with you, as educators, our gut reaction tends to be accurate, but I still want to back that up with some data. What markers, going back over the past, since August, am I using to determine that Tom is on the border with his learning target? I am not certain that he's going to meet it, okay? Or where Marcia is, there's not a doubt in my mind she's going to meet it, okay? So what we need you to do now is whatever your roster is for your students is identify, I would just break it down to 3 groups. These are going to meet it. These are not going to meet it. I find it helpful to then go back through and somehow designate those that are on the border, okay? Because those are ones that you want to specifically do something with. Then I want you to very, very quickly, I don't want to spend a lot of time thinking about this because I want you to do it in the classroom actually. You've got to think, what am I doing between now and that post-assessment time that's different with those kids that are struggling? What am I specifically going to do? I'm pulling this out of the hat. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to do some specific assignments with them that are reviewing key terminology or a key skill set that they're going to need to demonstrate on that post-assessment. I'm going to review that with them. I'm gonna hit something every Tuesday and Thursday that I might not have hit. I don't know what that looks like, okay? Let's say you're sitting here and you know for a fact all of your kids are going to meet their SLO. That's great. Push them. How are you gonna push them farther? This is about maximizing student learning. All right, so right now, your roster, identify those kids, who they are, and then what are some ideas that you're going to do, planning for that struggling learner or the kid that's not going to quite make it. Okay, everybody clear? Okay, take about no more than 10 minutes to do that. Just identify who those learners are.
So here's the red
Well, I was busy, this is my writing one. I've been cutting
Chad, we're meeting next month, right?
No, that is not.
Okay, about 1 more minute.
Yes, I'm not gonna take, so I'm just thinking, the overall, it's fine.
Michelle, do you know if this is coming? Well, and I think I'm gonna grade that. Yeah, I knew it. It's in O-Drive there somewhere, and I'm like, I looked in the SLO or something. I was gonna attach and send it to my well, I am serious. My children are for their appointments, so I schedule their appointments. And I thought we stayed when I was
Very quickly, let's have a seat.
They have an answer that on the post-assessment, they will have accommodations.
First of all, were you able to identify those kids?
Yes.
Yes. What did you use as markers? And I want to have a conversation. What did you use as indicators? Not just your gut. What did you use, Ruth?
I used their score on their first 9 weeks test and their second 9 weeks test.
Okay, so you used their 2 9 weeks tests. Is there anybody that you you felt was funky, that didn't quite fit, you needed more information or more markers or different markers?
Actually, it sort of verified my gut.
Okay, which it should. I said our guts are accurate, but we don't want to just leave it there because sometimes they're a little wrong. Anybody else? What markers did you use to identify these kids? What assessments over the past year, since you gave the pre-assessment, did you use? Semester exams, you went back, again, was that enough information to have you say, yes, they will, no, they won't? Or at this point, yes, they will, and no, they won't? So you would need more, what would you add? What markers would you add?
Look at like chapter test or unit test.
Okay, so you would break it down a little bit further. Okay. All right. What other markers are you guys using? Anybody? What markers are you using? How many? Did anyone use more than 2?
Some of them are career tech are doing performance based this time of year.
Okay, my very strong suggestion is that you use more than 2. It's more pieces of data. And also that you give those, you make certain those in some way mimic what's coming, but they're also they're a variety. All right, if you give the same type of paper, pencil, same type of whatever, and a kid does yes, but there's something other than that on the post-assessment, they're going to screw up. Okay? All right. What we want to look at now is just manipulating, and we've done this a little bit before. The cognitive levels of questions. I'm telling you, it was kind of an aha moment when we went through your pre-assessments as a group, and I will be very candid with you. Sometimes we struggle with, okay, what is it about this assessment, or what is it about this assessment item? What are we wanting? Okay, this teacher interpreted this item as a level 1. We think it's more of a level 2 or a level 3, or whatever. It's challenging sometimes to increase the challenge. All right, I want to shy away for a moment from using the cognitive level. Just what is it in your own experience as a learner that makes a question more challenging? Typically, it's the verb, what I'm asked to do with it. It's also the complexity of the question. If I have to do the first half of the question and get a result and apply that to the third part of the question, that's a complex question. You guys follow that? I've got to do first 2 parts of a question, get a result, a product, and apply it to the third part of the question. That question became a complex, higher level question. I want to walk through these next questions kind of rapidly. You have access to these questions in an email. I give them to you to kind of prompt your thinking when you are struggling with taking a level 2, level 3 question, not just on the pre and post assessment, all during the year. Because if we're not giving the kids an opportunity to do these higher end questions during the year, we expect it on them at the time of the post assessment, that's a ginormous disservice to them. So determining the cognitive level of questions, it's about the verb and what comes after. Let's look at a couple of these questions. They are on the screen there, or if you open the email, they're there also. I want you to just give me a quick what you think. What are the factors that affect the rate of evaporation? Level 1, level 2, level 3. No right or wrong answer necessarily. What do you think? The question is, what are the factors that affect the rate of evaporation? Don't be afraid. This is a happy, friendly environment. Take a risk. What level is that? Yes. Level 1. We in agreement? Low end-ish. Recall. Let's look at the next question. During which of the following weather conditions would you expect the highest incidence and the lowest incidence of heat stroke, and why? And then they're given a variety of temperatures, humidity, and wind velocity. What are you giving that question? 1, 2, or 3? What's the verb? What are they doing with that verb? How many parts of the question are they? What do they have to know in order to be able to answer that question? What would you give that? Is it a level 1?
No.
Okay, we're in agreement, it's not a level 1. I would say that's a safe assumption. Level 2, level 3. That's where we get a little bit more wishy-washy, but we can all agree it is a higher level question than just recall. Would that be a true statement? Okay, move on. Next, we've got a couple ones. What is the relationship between heat loss and environmental temperature? Level 1, level 2, level 3. What is the relationship between two things? What's the relationship between heat loss and environmental temperature? 2. So that would be safe. Why? Is that different than what is heat loss? Define heat loss and define environmental temperature? It's different. But you know what? If they can answer the relationship between the two, the chances that they know the definition of those two terms is excellent. Okay. Next question. Draw a simple graph to show the relation between the amount of air movement and the rate of sweat evaporation. 1, 2, 3, level. They're drawing a graph to show a relation. Anybody? 3? I'd say they're determining relationship and applying.
You know what would be helpful for this, Tom, is a rubric of what levels 1, levels 2, and levels 3 are.
If they have their blueprints, you guys have your blueprints from your assessments? Oh gosh, I didn't. You have, take some of these. You guys should have Bloom's wheel. They're coming back. What did we say on that graph one? Level 2 at least, maybe a level 3? Okay, next one. What supplies and equipment are necessary for a heat stroke trauma unit? Explain why each item is necessary. What level is that? 2. They have to identify equipment that's necessary, that would belong in a heat stroke unit, and say why. There's more if anybody does not have access to Bloom's. Next one. How were President Johnson's and the United States Congress aims of Reconstruction similar? What is that? Howard? Howard, what level would that be? How were President Johnson and the United States Congress aims of Reconstruction similar? What would you think that would be?
What level would it be?
Yeah, in challenge. Is it recall?
Analysis.
Okay. So level 2, probably a little bit higher. What is it that makes something a level 3? Is that it?
I was gonna say, it take another notch to apply it somewhere. How can you take what you know and have analyzed, but apply it to something else or synthesize it?
Okay. In a nutshell, your level 3 items are they're taking this information and they're creating, or they're taking and applying. Tends to be a guaranteed level 3 is they're taking pieces of information and they're creating something. Okay, they're showing. Again, we just want to show you some examples of questions that you can look and or mimic, or just to jog your mind a little bit. Next one, analyze the blueprint below. Okay, so kids are looking at a blueprint. What is missing? They've got to identify what's missing from the blueprint, which is knowledge. They got to know what should be there, what should not be there. What will happen to the structure if the missing components are not added? Okay, they're analyzing. I just thought something what would kind of be cool is put something that doesn't belong there. Have them find that. And what would happen if that stayed in there? I don't know. All right, which statement from the story contains personification? What level of a question is that? They're looking at a passage in a story and they've got to find personification.
Just finding?
What do they have to know to answer that question? They have to know what personification is, and they've got to be able to what? Recognize it, right? How would you make that a higher level question?
Give an example of.
Give
I
an
mean, your own
example of.
example of. Create your own example.
Create your own. Create your own would definitely. Okay. This next question, compare and contrast the health benefits of the following diets for a diabetic client. Two, three. Let me break it down to you. What if you just had compare and contrast the health benefits of the following diets? That's a strong level too. Okay? I'm now having to apply it to a specific category, which applies, I've got to know about a diabetic patient and their needs and things they don't need. So you see what I'm saying? It's not just the verb, it's the complexity of the question. Okay? And your kids might just, you might have a kid, I will guarantee, you're going to have a kid that would answer that question just by comparing and contrasting the diets and fail to apply it to a diabetic patient. See what I'm saying? That made that question more complex. Next, couple more, not too many. Categorize the following tools according to the following tasks. You're giving them some tasks, and they've got to categorize the tools. Is that more than recall? They've got to think, they've got to apply, so you're raising the level a bit. I'm trying.
There you go.
Okay, this next one. Determine the author's bias. Cite evidence from the text to support your answer. They have to, A, know what bias is. B, they've got to be able to synthesize information from text and make an evaluation, a judgment. Then they have to go back inside that document and find evidence. All right? That's relatively challenging. Let's use the word challenging for a bit, not cognitive level. One of the following steps for sterilizing instruments is out of order. Identify the step and explain what will happen if the order of steps is not corrected. You see that's different than just what are the steps of sterilization? That's a recall question. We've taken a recall question, what are the steps, and made it more challenging. All right, let me stop here for a second. As we go from pre to post assessments, and we're keeping them parallel, but they also know a lot more. If someone came in August and knew those steps of sterilization, you guys would be happy, right? You'd be happy. So why do we want to be the same happy? Again, we want to be more happy. So now they can not only identify them, but they can tell you why they're important and what happens if they're not done in order. We've raised the level of challenge. All right, the next one, John's garden, and I don't know why I capitalized garden, because I felt like it. John's garden is pictured above. What's the area of his garden? What do they have to do? Steve?
They will measure the dimensions of it.
Recall a formula and measure and do the math.
Depends what else labeled on that garden and what kind of shape it is.
There we go. So, wait. That's a very good point, though.
Right, they could have a diagonal and a rectangular garden, and you actually have to find the height or either.
So this is, as written, this is low level. And you, in about 30 seconds, made it more challenging, correct? So are you assessing the same skills? Yeah, but you're pushing them a little bit, okay?
But the only problem there, Tom, is if, depending on what was given, if they got the wrong answer, then you have to figure out, did they not get the right answer because they didn't use the right formula, or did they not get the right answer because they didn't find the width that they had to use Pythagorean theorem to find the width or something?
Stop saying that.
Yeah.
All right, but that, yeah.
So there might be levels to the wrong answer. Yeah.
Right. All right, name the main character. One. Make it a 2 or 3. Name the main character. How do you make that more challenging? Support your answer. Name the main character and explain why you believe this to be the main character. I don't know. Does that work?
Can you throw out a term like protagonist or something like that? Am I talking crazy?
That's just you've gone off the edge.
Okay.
What is the genre of the river? What does a student have to know to be able to answer that question correctly? What a genre is. That's pretty much it. All right. Predict weather from data collected through observation and measurements. Okay. Typically, if you have, all of you would have an opportunity to put this word in an assessment item at some time. That is the word predict. What's going to happen if? That you automatically force your students to have to think. Unless you taught them specifically, it's just, they're just recalling. Okay? Predict, great word. All right. This one I thought sounded challenging. Really not. Compare decimals through hundreds by using the terms less than, is greater than, and is equal to. What level is that? 1. Probably depends on grade level, but level 1. How would you make that a level 2? Bill, anybody? Level 3?
Order the groups of decimals.
Order, okay. So, but again, they've got to think. I like this next one, and this would apply to anybody, not just math. Explain the effect on the product when one of the factors is changed. Okay, most all labs have an end product at some point. Change a factor, what's the impact?